Today we finish our sermon series of Remember the Titans. It's a great movie, and has anyone here not seen that movie? Raise your hand. Doggone it. It came out in 2000 when I was in high school, and I don't know about you guys who ever played football. When that movie came out, our whole football team wanted to be Remember the Titans. We even practiced that dance where they're like, and we were 0-10. And so when you come out doing that little thing, Remember the Titans, they went undefeated that year, and we're 0-10. We were undefeated too as well. But I remember this movie really kind of speaking to me. Like it would just kind of pumped me up. In the story of Remember the Titans, the main character is Denzel Washington. He is Coach Herman Boone. In 1971, the government, the president said, now all schools will be interlocked, they'll be mingled. It's not going to just be all white schools. It's not going to be just black schools or Hispanic schools or whatever. You're going to integrate at this time. And so what happens is the orders put in that T.C. Williams Titan School will now be integrated in 1971. As you can imagine, a huge uproar at this time. We're not mixing, we're not doing this. And what they've decided to do was take the white coach, Coach Yost, out from being the head coach and bring in Coach Herman Boone, Denzel Washington, in as the head coach. Now the town is going nuts because Coach Yost had been there for 12 years prior, leading this football team, being a part of the community. So Coach Boone gets the job, and he goes, that's it, I'm in. But they let him know, listen, you're on a short leash right now. If you even lose one game, you're out. And Coach Boone goes back to them. He goes, I just moved here. I just moved my family here. Like, we just got settled. What do you mean? One game and you're fired the next day, just so you know that. So there's such immense pressure that is going on that he has to do. One, he is a black coach in a white community, now with black players coming in, with people that don't want him there. It's almost a seamlessly impossible situation to put someone for the very first time. Who's your daddy? I love that part of that movie. Obviously for obvious reasons, because Coach Boone is letting him know who's in charge of this moment. He's the leader at this time. Now, obviously, Gary is actually, in real life, he was the only preseason All-American on this team. This was already a great team. And he had told him, I don't need your people on defense. You can give him half of the other jobs, but don't do it here. Two separate people, in their minds, enemies, are having to join up in this moment. I think this would have been one of the hardest coaching jobs to have at the beginning, especially replacing someone who was already super successful. And so I feel like Coach Boone walked into an impossible situation at this time. He's going to have to mingle enemies together. Have you ever sat across from someone who was an enemy and said to yourself, yeah, we're going to be best friends one day? No, we don't think that. When we have an enemy sitting across from us, we're like, get me out of the situation. I'm not going to tell you anything about me. You're not going to tell me anything about whoever too as well. I don't know what your mom's name is. I don't know what your dad's name is. I don't want anything. We've all had enemies like this. And so what happens is now they have to join two opposite people together. And this is what Jesus had been doing his whole entire time when he had started his ministry of joining enemies together. One of the main stories that comes out of what Jesus does is where he bridges the gaps for all is when we see what he does with a Samaritan woman. It's the woman at the well. Now at this time, Samaritans and Jews did not get along. They were mortal enemies at this time, basically. And so Jesus, who has not told anyone what he's going to do yet, he's kind of started a little bit, he's preached a little bit, he's healed some people, but he's not letting the world know that the Messiah has come at this point. And so now he goes to a well, he goes and sits down, sends his disciples out at this well and asks this lady, the Samaritan woman, hey, can I get a drink of water? We're going to read this in John chapter 4, verses 1 through 4. Most of you guys know the story, but I think we're going to get some more insight into what this moment actually meant as far as bridging the gap between basically two rivals, two enemies that wanted nothing to do with each other. Jesus knew, in verse 1, Jesus knew the Pharisees had heard that he was baptizing and making more disciples than John. Though Jesus himself did not baptize them, his disciples did. So he left Judea and returned to Galilee. He had to go through Samaria on the way. Eventually he came to the Samaritan village of, thank you, Kent, that's you, go. Okay. near the field that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired from the long walk, sat wearily beside the well about noontime. Soon a Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Please give me a drink." The woman was surprised, for Jews refused to have anything to do with Samaritans. She said to Jesus, "You're a Jew. You're on the wrong team. We're not supposed to be talking. You're a Jew. I'm a Samaritan woman. Why are you asking me for a drink? Why are you even conversating with me in this moment? Do you know we're not supposed to be intermingling right now at this time?" This was not right in the sight of Jews, and Jesus was talking to a Samaritan. Even she knew it by even saying it to Jesus. "You're wrong for even looking at me at this point." And the disciples were definitely perplexed at this time too as well, because they're in foreign land, enemy land, and now Jesus is having a conversation not only with the enemy of the Samaritan, but also with a woman, which was not really acceptable at this time without the presence of other people. And the disciples even come up to him in John 4:27. It says this, "Then the disciples came back from getting the stuff, and they were shocked to find him talking to a woman. But none of them had the nerve to ask, 'What do you want with her?' or 'Why are you talking to her?'" Why did they think this? Because Jesus, the leader, was doing something different that other people could not understand. Leaders did not go out and go speak to enemies at this time. Leaders do things differently. You want leaders that do something differently. You want leaders that go against the tide that says, "No, if everyone's going this way, no, we're not doing that. We're going the opposite way." I like leaders like that, people that have strong voices that do stuff outside the box. Leaders set the tone, and oftentimes attitude in us is a reflection of the leadership that we're under. Leaders set tone, and attitude is a reflection of the leader. When you're speaking to the leaders, Julius is not the leader. Gary's the leader of the team at this point. And Gary, the leader, hears attitude reflects leadership. And for some of us who says, "Yes, that's so true. I follow the leader, and my attitude will reflect what my leader's attitude is." What is your attitude in your own home at times? I already know this. When my kids are in a bad mood, it's because dad was probably in a bad mood first. My kids will never be in a bad mood first because I'm like, "Get out of that attitude right now." But if dad's in a bad attitude, it gives permission for everyone else to be in a bad attitude. Anyone else kind of agree with that? Right? Yeah, that's what it is. So I know already that in my own household that my attitude will be reflected in my kids. When they see me get crazy over the barista who put an extra sugar in my coffee, and then I see them act like that later, I say that is a reflection of what I had taught them in that moment. I hate it when parents are always saying this, "Do as I say, not as I do." What? They're only going to see your actions is going to be reflected in them too as well. Or when you say to your kids, like, "I'm an adult, I can do that." What? What do you think? That they're picking up on the leadership that you're setting the example on? Don't think I haven't been guilty of this too as well, because I always say to my kids, "Do as I say, not as I do." But I definitely know that they will pick up on traits. Gary now picks up and hears clearly what Julius is saying in this moment, that the team is not responding the way it should be because your attitude is dividing us. And you want me to be on a divided attitude? No, I'm not going to do that at this moment. Jesus was all about bridging the gap for all these people. He was a leader that not only people heard, but felt to as well. Jesus did things that no one even would understand. When he saves a woman from being stoned, from committing adultery, that woman by law was supposed to be put to death. And Jesus says, "No, we're not doing it." Shaking everyone like that's not part of the law. When Jesus starts healing people on the Sabbath, they're like, "You're breaking the law." You mean me helping people on Sunday is breaking the law? Like, really? Me feeding someone is breaking the law? Me helping someone walk is breaking the law? Me going to a hospital to go pray for Sonny on a Sunday, whatever day it was, is breaking the law? Jesus always did these things that went against the grain at this moment. Julius is begging Gary now, go against the grain of what your race is saying we need to do. They're telling you that we're enemies, but if you want us to be a team and you don't want me to leave you out stranded when you're playing football, then bring us together. Our attitude will reflect your leadership, just like Jesus' leadership got reflected with the disciples later on too as well. One of the most amazing things that Jesus ever did that went completely against the grain was not when he said, Love your neighbor as yourself. We would all agree that is a beautiful sentiment to say, and it's a beautiful word to say. But the part that shakes you to the core and me to the core is when he says these words, love your enemy as well. Love your enemy just as much as you love your neighbor. This is what this whole thing is about, is loving your enemy as yourself. Because once love is given, once understanding is given, once your attitude is changed, it changes everything in your relationships. I remember back when I was in 6th grade, there was a guy named Eric Lee. He ended up being the best man at my wedding too as well. He went to go play with David Carr in Fresno State. He was a really good athlete. But I remember when I was in 6th grade and he was in 7th grade, they called him E. Lee the Legend. Just because they said that he was the legend of our area in Stockton made me hate him. Because I wanted to be the legend. And we had become like enemies, and we never even had any conversation. He was 6'4", I was 5'8" at that time, but I believed I was every bit of a better athlete than he was. And when we finally got to high school, he was a quarterback and I was a quarterback. And now I've been moved up on varsity football as a sophomore to be the quarterback. Guess what? Guess who I'm competing with? The junior quarterback who's already 6'4", and he comes up to me one day and he goes, listen, both of us can be super successful. He said this, not even a Christian. He's an atheist at this time. He doesn't even believe in Jesus. He comes up to me and he says, literally, he goes, if both of us are great athletes, in order for us to be successful, one of us is going to have to step down from being quarterback. And I was like, it ain't going to be me. Because the quarterbacks get the hot chicks. And get pretty ladies. Baby, I didn't date anyone in high school. Don't worry about it. You know what I'm saying? But I just remember thinking to myself, it's not going to be me. And as I'm staring up at this man who's 6'4", this tall or whatever, look, and he's always at the 49ers camp. His uncle is friends with Jerry Rice, so he's always getting this extra training and all this. He looks at me and he goes, I'm going to step down, I'm going to move, and you're going to be the quarterback. He said that to me. And I was like, okay. At that moment, him bridging the gap of our differences, we became best friends. We became inseparable. I would go visit him in college. He'd come visit me in college. He was the best man at my wedding. All because one person said to themselves, I'm not going to stand on these principles that I thought I needed to. I'm going to be willing to have grace and understanding for the opposite side and bridge the gap. Jesus is all about bridging the gap on things that we would never understand. And so is this movie at this point right here. Because if we go to the next scene, leaders always stand up for what is right. That's all they do. They stand up for what is right. And so there's this key moment in that left side, strong side. And I don't know about you, how you can't get pumped up, but when you see two people who didn't even like each other. But Julius calls out the leader, and the leader responds in this moment, and the leader stands up for Julius and the black players at this time. But now he's actually just standing up for the team because he says, if you do your job, then we'll all be successful, and he calls them out. And then all of a sudden, Gary looks at Julius, who they don't get along. They still haven't even talked. And Gary pushes him. And there's that fraction when he goes, left side, and Julius gets pushed back, and there's like a 2-second pause. Some of us in our time, in our lives, have had our enemy push us in an encouraging way, and we sit there and we take that pause. Now, either we turn away and we walk away, or we engage back with the person who is now pursuing us. Because that push in sports was his way of saying, let's go, buddy. Let's go do this. And Julia looks at it, and he goes, I'm in, and he pushes him back. Two people literally fighting, banging heads is two people coming together right now in this moment. Now the leaders stand up, and now it's changed the dynamic of the team because now all of a sudden they go back to school and everyone is on board with them. They're all like, yeah, if the two leaders, a black man and a white man, are now in a team together, now we're all supportive of this too as well. And now they call each other their brothers. Julius later goes on to invite Gary over to his house, and the white mom is looking at a black man in his house, and the black man picks up the white woman and hugs her. And the white woman hugs him back. And they're still friends to this day as well, all because of someone bridging the gap. Leaders set the tone. For us, when a leader pushes you in truth, in forgiveness and grace, do you push back in the way that we had saw right there too as well? Jesus is all for bridging the gap in all of our lives. That's what he ended up doing here in this moment right here. When Jesus was on the cross, literally, Sinner on this side, sinner on this side, with Jesus' arms fully exposed. One guy still condemning Jesus, being like, if you say who you are, then get us out of here. And the other sinner on the other side is literally yelling out loud, saying to them right now in this moment, like, buddy, we deserve this. This man doesn't deserve any of this. And Jesus sitting there with his arms open, bridging the gaps. Now a believer on this side, a sinner on this side, and still saying to himself, you're going to be with me in heaven. Enemies, they're throwing, when he's on the cross, they're humiliating him. He's naked. They're stabbing him. He's doing all this. Enemies provoking him at every level. And Jesus literally still says at this moment, because he doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the walk where he goes, I'm still going to love my enemy, as we saw those two right there. But Jesus on the cross while this is all happening, still literally being beaten and punished and stabbed and spit on, still says, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. You tell me a better leader to have an example of, to a better leader to follow. I wish that every time I got mad or I wanted to flip over tables like you can flip over tables. Don't worry, girl, I know you flip over tables. I wish that when I would do that, I would still literally sit here and be able to say, like, God, I don't want to do that. I just want to love on that person, because maybe if I love on that person, I will bridge the gap for someone else. I can't even tell you how many people I brought into Jesus just by being there and saying, listen, you don't have to come to church. I'll come meet you. I'll go to your house. I'll go to your hospital. I'll go to that party with you or whatever and go meet them where they're at. Like all Jesus does and all disciples we should do is bridge the gap to other people. If people don't come to church with you for you to bridge the gap, then you go to them. But man, when the two leaders get on the same page, it doesn't just change the team, it changes the head honchos, it changes the CEOs, it changes the presidents, and it has an effect on the coaches too as well. So career. And basically before this game, which is the championship game that will cement Herman Boom as being successful of integrating different nationalities together, they come to him and say, if you throw the game, we'll kick Coach Boom out and you'll be back in next season as head coach. And so during this game, he sees all the injustice that's going on in that moment. So he stands up and he calls his team over and he says, listen, enough of this. We're going to blitz all night. And for those of you who don't know what the football term is, blitz all night means keep coming, keep coming, keep coming, keep coming, keep coming. The leaders at the kids level had now spewed over into the adults. And now the adults and them were on the same page. The enemies had been bridged together, and it had made for an undefeated season where they went on to win the national championship. I'll always say this. A lot of us will look at our enemies as people that are going to replace us. We need to start looking at our enemies as reinforcement. All of us. If we go back to the Samaritan woman, out of all the people, why did Jesus use a Samaritan woman to go out and tell other people that the Messiah is here? Why choose your enemy to go out and do this at that moment? It wouldn't make sense to me at this time. If we go to John 4 again, and I'm going to read this to you. The woman said, I know, the Samaritan woman, this is the Samaritan is saying this to Jesus after they've had this long discussion. The woman said to Jesus, I know the Messiah is coming, the one who is called Christ. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. Then Jesus told her, this is the first time he has said this outside of his disciples at this moment. He's saying this to his enemy at this time. He's saying this to the people that his people hate. They're not Jews. He's saying this, I am the Messiah. Then the disciples came back and they were shocked to find him talking with her. We know that. Then the woman left her water jar beside the well, ran back to the village, telling everyone, come and see a man who told me everything I did. Could he possibly be the Messiah? So the people came streaming from the village to see him. Through Jesus, through the Jews' enemy, people were now coming to see who Jesus was at this moment. Think about it. What a brilliant move at this point. Jesus using the enemy to tell the good news that the Jewish Messiah who said they would come from David's line is here. Why choose the enemy? What if Jesus had sent Peter? I mean, we know Peter cuts off ears. Peter's very, Hostile. Peter's like you. He flips tables a lot. You know what I'm saying? I know I'm pointing you out, girl. But but he's very hostile. Why not Jesus just send one of the 12 disciples he's already been with for a number of months, maybe a year? Why not send someone more talented, more well-spoken, more who had more experience to go tell the Samaritans that the Messiah, the Jew Messiah, is here? Would they have listened? If you walk into enemy ground, are you going to have their ear? Nah, it would be rare for me to walk into my enemy's house of 15 to 20 people and be like, hey guys, I just got some really good news to tell you. So here's my pitch. Are you on board? No one's going to hear me. But Jesus sends their own kind to go tell them the story that the Messiah is here. What a brilliant move at that time. What a brilliant move. I had told you guys a story, and I'll say it again. When I was in youth, there was a girl who was dressed in Gothic, and she would always show up to youth. And I've told this story, but it fits so good right now, in the same time right now. I told her, I said, why are you dressed Gothic? You're not going to, Jesus doesn't look like that. Jesus doesn't do any of this. And she said to me, Brian, what was her name again? Jamie Weinman. And she goes, David, you can never walk into my circle of all my Gothic friends and tell them about Jesus. They won't listen to you at all. But if I go and I do it, they'll hear me, and they do hear me. And she was right. Every single one of those Gothic friends would come to our high school Bible study on every Friday night, all because what I perceived was the enemy was the one that was able to share the good news. Sometimes when an enemy is put in front of you, it's because God says, I want you to invest in them to share it with those people. You're not going to have the ability to go spread the good news of Jesus Christ. As believers, we should all want to see every single person come to Jesus, go to heaven, experience eternity with the risen Savior. Now, the reality is that you're not Billy Graham, I'm not Billy Graham, and I'm not going to have an audience of 60,000 people. But what I can do is tell my daughter about Jesus, who will tell someone else. Well, I can tell you about Jesus, you experience it, and you tell someone else, and have this overflow. We need to be as Jesus when we look at our enemies and say, that's a possible disciple. That's a possible one that can go out and spread the good news of Jesus Christ. And because, as the worship team comes up, because Jesus chooses her, it says this in John 4:39-42. Many Samaritans from the village believed in Jesus because what the woman had said. He told me everything I did. When they came to see him, they begged him to stay in their village. So he stayed for 2 more days. Doesn't sound like he's the enemy anymore. It had been bridged. The gap had been filled by Jesus again. Long enough for more people to hear his message and believe. And they said to the woman, we now believe, not just because of what you told us, but because we have heard him ourselves. Now we know that he is indeed the Savior of the world. Let me wrap up with this. Remember the Titans is a great example of the life of Jesus and how he has brought all together. I don't care if you're Gentile, Jew, black, white, Mexican, Caucasian, or whatever it is. Jesus came to bridge the gap so every individual can live a life in eternity with the Father in heaven. He wants you on his team. There are 2 teams in this world. There is Team Jesus and there is Team Satan. There is Team Spirit and there is Team Flesh. Flesh is the thing of the enemy. What team are you going to be on? Be a disciple that bridges the gap for all. Be a disciple that blitzes all day and night for Jesus. Keep Jesus coming. Keep him coming. And be a disciple that loves your enemy because you just don't know how many more people will come to Jesus through you in that relationship. Guys, will you stand with us?